What's up guys, Dave from BCBushcraft. Welcome to another Bush Talk episode. I haven't done one since the last Bush Talk episode. I finally managed to get out in the woods and I've been doing a day camp, so go check that other video out. For today's episode on Bush Talk, I'm going to go over, maybe 5 tips on how to improve and build upon your bushcraft skills. What I did when I first started out on building my strengths and weaknesses and just developing skills in the woods. So when you go out and do solo overnights or whatever it is that you want to achieve, you feel competent and confident in it, and you can, just go out and have fun and not stress too much about whether you're going to do things right or get stuck out there. Okay, so let's dig right into it. Tip number 1, watch a lot of videos. Watch a lot of my videos. No. Watch a lot of videos of guys doing what you want to do. I find that I'm a kind of visual learner very often. I find that if I want to learn something, I can look at it in a book, I can read about it in a book, but when I see someone do that thing, it really helps me to understand what I need to do that. So things like setting up tarps, starting fires, feather sticks, all those sorts of things. You can figure a lot of it out by watching videos. You just have to be very careful because YouTube, there's a lot of things that people get hung up on, or it's not the best way to do things either. So use your discretion. Watch channels that are reputable, that do it all very often, and try to watch guys that are going out in the woods and doing overnights. They tend to know what they're doing more. Not to make myself at a higher level or anything like that, but there is a level. There's the backyard bushcraft type of dude, and then there's the dude that actually goes into the woods. So I suggest watching dudes that actually go into the woods and are actively doing the activity, not just sitting at home on their porch making a feather stick. But that kind of ties into my tip number 2. So tip number 2 on how to improve your bushcraft skills and be better out in the woods is to practice things at home. It makes a lot of sense. I'm sure you guys have done sports and played music or whatever, done other hobbies. Bushcraft is no different. You got to do that. You got to do things as much as you can, and you'll be way more confident out in the woods if you've done a million feather sticks at home. The way that I learned how to do feather sticks is I split up a bunch of wood at home. I brought wood from the home. I brought wood from the woods. I brought that home, split it up into feather sticks pieces, and then just practice a lot. I practiced until my hands hurt almost, just trying to get the best curls possible. I practiced tying knots at home, doing things like the Canadian jam knot. The self-tensioning knots are important too, and just doing those things because they help a lot with tarp setup. I've also practiced setting up tarps at home, practice fire building at home, different ways that you can use your ferro rod. If you've never used a ferro rod and you go out to the woods and just expect to be able to do it, you might come into a realization that it's not that simple. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you have to figure out the kinks. So doing that stuff at home definitely will work out the kinks for you, but it's not a realistic situation of the woods. The woods, the wood might be wet. The woods has the real element to it, the nature element to it. So at home, you can get confident with your skills, but you need to take it to the next level. And my 3rd tip kind of runs into that. So my 3rd tip on building your bushcraft skills is to do bushcraft day camps. Camps like I do. Go out there, practice setting up a tarp. Go out there, practice fire and wood collection, fire making, purifying your water from streams, cooking food on the fire, everything that you would do besides sleeping overnight, pretty much. Set up a tarp like you would for an overnight. Go out there, spend 3-4 hours, collect some wood, build a fire, purify some water from a stream, maybe collect some rainwater, get out there and, work on your identification of trees, on identification of wood, of plants, do some scouts, look for good areas that you can do an overnight in. I often find that if I've gone to an area, scoped it out a bit, I feel way more comfortable doing an overnight there than if I just go out there and have no idea what I'm going into. I've done both of these. Like today where I've been scoping out areas for overnights. So when I come back here, I feel more comfortable each time that I come back here. So it's all about getting comfortable, and doing an overnight isn't that hard. There's elements of it that are hard, but you can eliminate that by practicing. So day camps are a really, really great way to practice, get out there, and they're enjoyable, they're fun, you're in the woods, it's relaxing. So they will take some of the edge off of your first solo overnight, or your second or third or fourth or whatever it is. And that's one way that I found to get more confident and comfortable in my own shoes and my own abilities in the woods. My number 4 tip is to teach someone else about bushcraft. I often teach my wife stuff. She's learned how to, safely use a knife, and she could probably do a feather stick, which is pretty awesome. So, try to find a friend that you can discuss it with. Online friends are fine. I've made connections with the channel, and there's people that I discuss knife making and bushcraft with and all that sorts of things. A physical person, a physical friend is even better, because then you can go into the woods with them. And you can just talk about different ways to do things. It's just, it will ingrain into you more when you teach someone about something. So say you're working on your tree identification and you just figured out how to identify cedars and Douglas firs and some of the main things out there. Go and show people that don't have a clue what tree they're looking at, and show them the reasons why that tree is a Douglas fir, show them the reasons why that tree is a cedar, or why this plant is edible, why that plant isn't edible, what type of fern that is, all those sorts of things. I found that is a really good way to kind of connect the dots in your own head, because when you try to talk to someone about it and try to get them to understand it, you end up understanding the subject even more. Going and teaching someone else about bushcraft is my number 4 tip. Number 5 is kind of dry, but it's really important, and that's books. Kochanski's Bushcraft book. You can read Dave Canterbury's book. It's probably fine. I've honestly never read it, but I'm sure that's fine. I think there's, what's his name, Graves or something like that. I think it's more of an Australian book, but there's a Bushcraft book to read. SAS Survival Handbook. That's a good book to read. Field guides for plants and tree identification. Those are really important. You can find some resources online. I'll put some links to, I have a tree book that is free online from the government of British Columbia. I'll put a link to that in the description, and that will give you every single tree in BC, how to identify it, and where they're located mostly. So it will give you regions of where you'll find this tree and where you won't find this tree. Trees are very particular to environments. If it's too wet, certain trees don't grow, certain trees do grow. If it's too dry, certain trees will grow, certain trees won't grow. So learning what you might encounter based on just geography is something that is really good to learn. So I highly suggest finding plant identification books. I'll put a link. I'll try to find the book that I have, and I'll put a link to it. And I'll put a link to the online resource. So just to round things off, I'll throw in a tip number 6 to build your bushcraft skills, and that is not to get hung up on gear. Don't get too obsessed about the gear. Even though all of us do, and myself included, I get obsessed with knives. I get obsessed with, making them sharp and having sharp tools and collecting different axes and all this stuff, but don't get hung up on it. You can easily go and practice bushcraft with only Canadian Tire and Walmart and dollar store items. You don't need to buy expensive sew nylon tarps. You can get landscaping tarps or whatever. They're waterproof. They might not be lightweight and they might make noise, but they're $8. So you can get Moras for knives. You can get Fiskars axes instead of Grants Force Brooks. You can get cheaper folding landscaping saws for $12 if you go into hardware stores or anything like that. That will do a good enough job. It might not be as efficient as a Silky, but you'll be able to saw a wood and be able to make a tent peg or saw up a piece of firewood with it. So that's my tip number 6, is don't get too hung up on the gear, because that might that might make you feel like you can't do things because you don't have certain items, and that's not true. Part of the videos that I want to be producing, even though I'm acquiring more gear, like I want to kind of come off of gear and being reliant on it. And so I'm trying to do more videos that involve less stuff. So you can see that, well, you know what? I don't actually need to have a tarp if it's not going to rain. I can build a shelter. It doesn't have to be waterproof, but I can sleep on it, sleep under it, and it will reflect heat from the fire, and I can be warm. So yeah, that's my tip number 6. Don't get hung up on gear. So there you go. There are my tips for how to improve your bushcraft skills. They're quite basic and simple, but it might just help you along the road to getting you to where you can go and do solo overnights or whatever it is that your goals, whatever your goal is. So develop your own goals too and try to accomplish them. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please comment, please like, and please subscribe. This is Dave from BC Bushcraft. Take care.